Hello and welcome to another episode of Cafe Booleans. As always, I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, John, Susanna, and Alex. How's it going?
Hello.
My coffee's cold.
Hello. Now the tea.
And you're Costa for our listeners.
I'm Costa, yeah, for everyone who doesn't understand.
Have you met Costa?
So I am actually starting this week with an article that I've brought. This one is around digital distribution and game prices, and it's a cool little article written by Games Hub. And it's a good article for people who are looking at pricing their games and just trying to understand the different ways of pricing their games and I guess all the different types of models out there at the moment, like subscriptions and self-publishing or publishing, with a publisher on Steam or anything like that. But it's a really good article around that. It goes into how, a lot of different statistics. I'll just list them off because there's a lot here. But many game developers believe the standard 30% platform on platforms like Steam, PlayStation, and Nintendo is too high. So some figures from the Game Developers Conference 2021 State of the Game Industry Survey: 71% of over 3,000 respondents believe digital storefronts should only receive 20% or less of each sale. So it's interesting to see that developers are now kind of, pushing back a little bit. A couple of different places. So the industry standard platform fee is around 30%, and that's like Steam, PlayStation, Nintendo. Epic Game Store, in an attempt to sort of disrupt the market, is at 12%. So they only take 12% from developers, and itch.io allows developers to set their own split with a default cut of 10%. Microsoft takes 30% of sales made through Xbox's digital store, while its PC marketplace recently changed to 12%, in line with Epic. Another one, so it actually goes into Aussie developers as well. So there's a developer in Canberra named David Cribb who develops under the name Celestia and makes various games with progressive themes, including an investigative thriller called A Hand with Many Fingers, which was the Game of the Year at the 2020 Free Play Awards. And he frequently releases his games on itch.io and Steam. So it has a cool breakdown here of his experiences with publishing games. So as a self-published developer, he receives between 70 to 80% of each sale, and it all comes through itch.io with the default 10% platform fee, payment processing, currency exchange, and other fees. He typically receives less than 65% of each sale on Steam, and it's also worth noting that all of his games include a flexible pricing option on itch.io, allowing players to pay what they can afford. And he's put a pretty cool breakdown. Another developer from Melbourne, Simon Boxer, he's put a pretty good breakdown on Twitter of how much he actually gets from each sale. So he goes, if published with a 50-50 split with a publisher, you roughly receive around 24 cents per dollar for every unit sold. And if the publisher split is 70-30, you get about 34 cents. And then if you self-publish, you get about 49 cents. So you're still losing like quite a lot just to publishing fees and all that sort of stuff. There is a lot on this thing, but you should definitely read it. Another cool thing that I thought I'd mention was around the Game Pass effect. So it's kind of talking about how this new concept of like subscription has popped up through Game Pass and also Apple Arcade, and some statistics from the IGEA, so the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association, Digital Australia 2022 report, which we've mentioned on here before, says that as many as 48% of video game playing households use a subscription service. So that's quite a lot of an increase. And it kind of goes into if this negatively impacts retail sales. And basically it doesn't. It actually increases sales. And that's something that Alex and I have seen with a developer that we've spoken to before, who actually said that it increased the amount of sales they got because it just got the game out there and people understood it and saw it more. So there was different developers who've actually spoken out and said, if you've got millions of players playing your game on Game Pass and they're telling their friends who don't have Xbox, hey, I played this game, it's really cool, that kind of word of mouth generates sales elsewhere. And again, this trend was confirmed by multiple developers, where being available on one platform subscription service saw a boost of sales on another platform. And this also aligns with IGE's research, which found that 67% of surveyed households preferred to buy games on release rather than play them on a subscription service. I'll kind of leave it at that because there's a lot there. But what does everyone think about this? And has anyone had to go through this process of pricing a game or looking at this kind of stuff?
I mean, I've been part of a team that's had to price a game, but I've not directly priced the game.
What were the kind of thoughts that went into that, Alex?
Well, just trying to think what you can and can't say. It's so that gentleman that got mentioned, and he says he releases his games on Steam. He's not releasing them on console, and that's the other you don't just have the publisher cut, you have the platform cut, and then you have which I guess is Steam in that case, but Xbox, Nintendo, they'd all have a cut. Then you have the software cut. So Epic, I'm pretty sure a game that comes out on the Epic Game Store doesn't have to be made with Unreal Engine. I mean, we just know that it doesn't have to be. But they're already getting a cut once the game makes a certain amount of money. So maybe that's factored into their lower 12%. There's definitely a few different things to factor in with costs, definitely. And you do end up getting that smaller piece.
Even another thing on here as well was around Apple Arcade and how much they were spending as soon as they started Apple Arcade to try to get developers to join their platform and to develop for their platform. So there was a lot of business development and sort of coming out and trying to find developers. And I had seen an article probably about a year or two ago where I think Apple was actually spending more than the Australian government to support developers to develop on their on Apple Arcade exclusively. So there was games like I think, what was the big one, that sort of Oregon Trail, which was from Gameloft, and that was exclusive to Apple Arcade. But I saw that there's actually, so in this article it mentions that they've actually reined in the amount of funding that they've been spending on games because they're having a shift in their strategy. So I assume it's probably not doing as well as they had thought it would.
One thing I find interesting is with Game Pass now and your kind of subscription-based models. Because I come from a music background where we have things like Spotify and every other streaming service where there's been kind of, let's say, industry discontent with their payment systems, where essentially what it has been is the more popular you are, the more you get paid per stream. And so if you're like a little indie nobody, you get paid very, very little per stream compared to if you're Ariana Grande, who would get paid a lot per stream. That is possibly shifting on some streaming services, but not quite there yet. I think SoundCloud is actually the first one looking at doing it as a direct per stream is a certain amount of money. But now that we have subscription movies with Netflix, and now we've got subscription games, I wonder, is it going to enter a similar kind of model where you have your AAA titles earning more money per download compared to your indie ones?
The other thing is like...
I think...
Oh yeah, go on.
No, it's just going to say, I think that the digital versus, boxed thing is, a challenge, because I still like having a box of things, right? So, and I'm still willing to pay extra for the box, which is stupid, because I got nowhere to store it, but I just like holding the thing. All right, and, when the cost of that is the same, you're I feel like, why would I not buy the box? I'm getting something extra because I'm getting this nice box. But if it's a lot cheaper, then it's a bit different. But obviously, the costs are more if they're producing the discs. So it's again another
Well,
think about that.
there's this thing called you guys might look it up while I say it. The classic Alex is just going to say something and not know it exactly, but it turns out it'll always be true.
Well, one day we'll be able to afford a research assistant to do it for us.
Yeah. There's this thing I heard about called the switch tax.
Switch tax.
Which is basically because of what Susanna just said, because it costs more to produce a physical copy of the game, and especially Nintendo's, whenever they can go cartridge based, they go cartridge based, and that always costs more. So their games cost like 10% more online for the Switch version than they would for their like Steam counterpart or something like that. So they line up with the same cost of the physical version.
So then, because we've got
really
Hinosis on Switch.
That like shouldn't be the case, but interestingly, because Susanna was saying she prefers the boxed version of things, I'm actually the opposite. I prefer the digital downloads, simply because once I have it, it's kind of attached to my account, and I don't have to store it anywhere, and I kind of just can forget about it for years, and then come back to it, and it's indefinitely there.
You think it is, but then when they remove it from the service, then you don't have it anymore.
Well, that is true. That is true. If they change that, well then, oof.
What about when the internet fails and we're all just sitting around playing our boxed games?
The apocalypse.
I have to tell the audience the irony of what Susanna's just said, because it says her camera's disabled due to slow internet connection.
She's playing a box games right now. What are you talking about?
That's great.
Another part to this article actually as well was around. So we spoke about the developer who put his game on both Steam and itch, and it talks about the value in a video game, and in the context of that person, it actually mentions how on Steam they priced the game obviously at a specific price. On itch they had a variable pricing, so it was whatever anyone wanted to pay, and there was actually a bunch of negative reviews on Steam complaining about the length. So he didn't actually get those criticisms on itch.io. So when the Steam user score was sitting at around 60%, the itch score was around 90%, and he puts it down to the difference partly coming down to the platform design. So Steam obviously doesn't allow for pay what you want pricing, so players take a bigger risk when they purchase something experimental at full price. And Steam also offers refunds, where a game has been played for less than 2 hours, but that definitely makes people think that a game is worthless if it's under 2 hours long.
I hate that so much. Like, it's so dumb. Nobody watches a movie that's only an hour 30 and says, "Oh, that wasn't as long as Titanic. I want my money back." Come on, like, what are we doing?
And that's the thing, right? Like, he talks about it how he's like, I hate it. The simplest way to ruin a game is to pad its runtime so that it offers more value for money, because they're putting a value on. Okay, well, it's going to take you 2 hours to figure out whether it's a good game. Well, it has to be longer than 2 hours for it to be a good game. So it's,
you're just going to add grind, aren't you? Like,
well, yeah, and
that's going to throw off your balance.
Lure, which we talked to Blue Moon Games. My mate Michael Fischetti, he was saying that that game just exists on itch, and it's doing great, right? Like the reviews are awesome and stuff like that, and they've just put the page up on Steam, and they're going to put it up on Steam, but they have to make it free for that reason, because that game is like 10 minutes long. And that's kind of messed up, because it was made in a game jam, but that's still work they produce, like Susanna's saying, and because they know it's that, so everyone will just refund it. So I wonder then, should there be like a completion override? Like if you completed 100% of the game, it's like if you eat I guess Foodland doesn't do that. I was like, if you eat 100% of the bag of chips, like they're not going to give you your money back if you don't like it, but I'm pretty sure they do.
But I think we were discussing this earlier, actually, where could you do like based on achievements or something, where the developer can put achievements within the game and actually choose the point of time at which the refund is no longer allowed.
It's like how they do like the racing games. Like you can't shortcut through Mario Kart because there's like gates every so often. They know you've passed this point, you've passed this point. Or
you just change the pricing model like they've mentioned, where it's like maybe it's a minimum of this much that developer is willing to accept, and then it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe $5, like at least $5 I want for this game, but like if you want to pay more than that, go ahead and do it. Like that kind of pay what you want. People attach the value that they feel is what it should be. Whether, you know, whereas when a developer prices it, they come at it saying, this is what I think it's worth, and you know, that's when you have like sales and all that sort of stuff. Like, because one of the things that he mentions was actually that the Steam reviews changed when he halved the price about a month later, because the perceived value of the game to the amount that they're paying.
Yeah.
If I could play devil's advocate for a second, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but if I'll make a parallel to music and streaming again, one change that we've seen is, because there's so much content now, pop music has started moving choruses to the start of songs to hook people in early. And this has come a lot with playlists. So people flick through playlists and you'll spend 10 seconds a song. And if it doesn't immediately hook you, then you're on to the next one, kind of thing. Now, I wonder whether that 2 hours, for a game that is longer than 2 hours, 2 hours should actually be plenty of time to hook you into a game. And if it hasn't, then you probably won't like the rest of the game. The problem is, I guess, with those shorter games then.
With the shorter ones. So, yeah, it should be like on a scale, like a percentage scale, like of time. Like if they theorize that this game is going to take 7 hours to complete, then like, why'd I pick 7? Nothing divides with 7. If you said your game takes 4 hours to complete, like, all right, you have 30 minutes. All right, you have 30 minutes of playtime, and then you can... Or if your game takes 10 minutes, all right, you have like 3 minutes of playtime.
Yeah, it would be good if it was proportional.
Yeah. Percentage of it, yeah.
Well, that's why you have demos, you know? Like you have a demo or you have some kind of teaser.
Because like that length thing that like is really bad for indies. Because like sure, like every AAA game is going to be X amount of hours because we got 6,000 billion dev hours into it. But an indie game might have a small team. You're probably going to have like a really small runtime. It seems harmful.
Yeah. What about like I'm now just throwing this out as a stupid idea because it's not something I've thought out, and I can imagine some balding business dude just being like, well, you don't understand how the Australian Consumer Act law works. If you had like... Yes,
that was spot on.
I'm saying this knowing it's stupid.
That was spot on.
Thank you. Thanks.
I feel like I've met someone that's like that.
And they always have to sit back and say, you just don't understand how the Consumer Act works.
Alex, you've just pissed off one of our biggest listeners. I don't know who it is, but I'm sure they're out there. All right, what's your opinion?
To reading the blog. What if, and again, knowing it's a stupid idea, you had, because publishers or whoever would abuse it, but you had like an insurance thing. Like, you know how there's like games that have, like you go to EB Games and they're like, oh, would you like to buy disc protection? And you're like, absolutely not, because I'm not going to throw my game in the sand or anything. If you had that, but for return policies, right? Like they were like, look, okay, your game's going to cost 15% cheaper, but you cannot get a refund. Like on indie titles, let's say, indie titles. But you say 15% cheap, I'm just throwing that number out, and you can't get a refund or whatever like a good estimate to figure out what the indies are, but you pay full price, and if you don't like it, you can get your money back.
Alex, I think that's against the consumer protection.
You just don't understand how the laws work.
I tell you what, Alex, look, Nintendo already does this for the bonus of no discounted price. You just don't get to refund it, I'm pretty sure.
Shigeru Miyamoto goes, what money? I know he's not in charge, but it's only
throwing it down one of those Mario tunnels.
What's $3 trillion bill?
But a lot of technologies developed today, like across games, across even, I want to come back to that music thing you were saying, John, but a lot of things, it feels like changing gears, right? Like as technology advances, it's like going up in a gear where your bike or your car slows down, but it can achieve a greater thing. So like, 20 years ago, indie developers developing on the Nintendo 64 isn't really a thing, where now they have the technology to do that. So like maybe like it's a shift. There can be a shift in thinking of like, because there's so much content out, right? As you were saying, that you you do that model of I'll price a game what I think I will let the consumer pay what they think it's worth. Maybe the consumer's fair on it. Like, I don't know what I was getting at with the gear shift, but like it's easier to make a game is what I mean. It's like when they do this stuff with like local gardens and stuff like that, like fruit and veg. They like pay what you think is fair because they had the technology to pump it out faster. Where like back in the day, they didn't. There was like they had overheads. They have to charge a certain amount. Now it can be a bit more, It'd be interesting to know how those things go when they charge what they think is fair, if they actually get a good amount.
I think you brought up an interesting point as well, and also what Susanna was saying about physical copies is back when everything was physical, if you didn't like a game, you could actually then resell it. And you've got that whole secondary market there. So there was no need. I mean, yes, you could get refunds, but there's no need for like that necessity because it's like, you don't like it, just resell it, try and make your money back or whatever. But you can't do that with digital now.
It's not an option anymore, yeah.
Unless they're NFTs.
What's the timer? We're 21 minutes in and NFTs have come up.
I didn't bring it up this time, so. No, but you bring a good point there, Alex, around like people valuing games at what they want to, if they just put a price down of what they want to pay, it almost makes people want to buy it versus like you might look at a game price and say it's $15, that's too much, I'm not going to pay for it. But then if I had it as a pay as you want, someone might pay $30 for it, and then you might pay $1 for it. I'm still, making money on it, and someone that wouldn't have played it is now playing it, even if it's at a lower price. So you're getting more customers just by doing that. And I mean, it would be interesting to see like developers who, even maybe that developer who had at both price points or through both distribution of Steam and itch.io to see the breakdown of profits from each one.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I just had a thought, actually, because we were talking about Nintendo. I remembered one of the previous games I was playing had a game demo, and that's something that Nintendo games do often provide. And that is actually a way to try out the first proportion of a game based on what the developer wants at no cost. And basically, if you don't like it by the end of the demo, you don't buy it. So
yeah,
I wonder if there's a way for indie small games to do demos in a way where you get the first half of a game or something.
If there is, they have to do it different from Nintendo, and that's an easy task to do. But the Nintendo's the problem with Nintendo is it counts as a different app, and I imagine it's the same with other platforms. But it doesn't say like. If you... what game was it? I think I bought the demo for Gamedev Simulator. No, Gamedev Tycoon, whatever it is, that pixel art one. And I made big progress in the demo. And then you have to buy the separate game and it's a different app. And you're like, God,
yeah, some of them do keep the save though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've played a few where it transfers the save file over. So it can definitely be done. And I mean, like, I might get shot for saying this, but I'm wondering whether, if that's the case, maybe this is actually a problem for the indie developers to solve. Who are making short games. Do they need to find a new creative way to create demos?
Costa, can we get Gamedev Tycoon devs on and corner them?
Because I think with Henosis, we just used the first 2 levels as the demo.
Oh, so you actually released a demo then? Yeah.
Yeah, on that was on Switch. And then I don't know if it saved the progress or not.
Do you know, I don't know if you can talk about this, but did you see any stats of how many people play the demo versus the full game?
I haven't looked or found out, but that's interesting. I'll see if I can talk about that sometime.
The other
was the demo out on all the platforms or just Steam or
just Switch?
Steam, Itch, and Switch, but they all have different pricing.
Steam, Itch, and Switch. That sounds cool.
Steam, Itch, Switch.
Steam, Itch, and Switch.
Steam and Itch equals Switch.
Yeah.
Switch.io.
Stitch.
Something that I mean, like, we're talking game dev, but I think John, you said something really interesting before that I didn't know about, and
right, interesting or interesting?
Wait.
Was it the chorus thing? Because I was hoping we could get back to it.
Interesting. I'm going to get cancelled for it, or interesting, late, let's have a discussion.
That means more views on the podcast, so you cancel away.
Yeah,
John Rogan here.
It was... What did you say? One was the chorus thing, yeah. No, it was that. Actually, I mean, this is partly true.
Costa, play back that sound clip.
No, you said Spotify pays based on how popular you are, let alone how many streams you have. That's kind of messed up. If you don't know, I've never heard anything like that before. Is that just generally accepted?
It's I could tell you what the current state is, but I don't think it's changed too far from that. And it's not just Spotify; it's every streaming platform, more or less. SoundCloud is the only one I've heard that has implemented or is implementing a one stream equals this much money system. And yeah, it hurts a lot of people who aren't super famous, but I do also understand it because it's the super famous people that draw listeners to a platform. So, for example, Tidal, I mean, yes, they've got high quality audio and that's their whole push, but I mean, their whole marketing thing was that they had a whole lot of celebrities become business partners of the product, and that's what pulled a whole lot of people in. So, same way, if you're Joe Rogan, for example, on Spotify, yes, podcasts work differently, but let's say he's a musician. A lot of people would go to Spotify if they want Joe Rogan. So he is then more valuable to them.
Well, that was the thing, right? So, because a few years ago, and I say speaking of Joe Rogan, but this has nothing to do with Joe Rogan, it's just got to do with the current news of the whole Neil Young stuff. A few years ago, I'm pretty sure Neil Young was suing Spotify because he was only getting paid like 0.00 something cent per stream. And he was like, that's not fair. And they basically said, well, you sold your rights years ago. Take it up with your publisher.
Yep.
And then there were other musicians who were like, yeah, what's he talking about? I make a great living, like Everlast and stuff like that, who own their rights. They're like, I make a great living. So the narrative that got developed from that was, if you're not in the know like you are, of, oh, okay, they must pay well if you own your rights. But you're saying if you own your rights, but you're not Everlast, if you're not, it still doesn't really...
Well, yeah, so I think it's different now, but I checked mine like 6 months ago, and I think for 600 listens, I got $5. So enough to make myself a copy. So,
is it smart enough to know if I just put it on repeat?
They probably work it out. I haven't tried it yet, though. I want it to be at least semi-legitimate. So, but I mean, that who knows? Like the case with Neil Young, because they would be paying out the rights holders, and that goes to the record label or whoever, and then they split it up between them. Each artist situations would be different. I personally go direct through DistroKid, which is a website which I may actually be partially owned by Spotify. I'm not sure, but I guess I see most of my money, even though it's still very small. If you're a musician from probably more than 10, 15 years ago, you most likely signed up to a record label, and there's all kind of divvying up of profits there. It'd be the same in the games industry. So, publishers take a certain amount before studios probably get profits.
It's interesting to see the parallels between the games industry and the music industry. When Spotify started, you wouldn't have seen Spotify paying like artists to be on their platform like we see with games now. Like Xbox, Apple, they're paying so much for developers to flock to their, or even make games exclusive to their streaming platform, which is kind of like reminiscent of the consoles themselves. It's like the streaming service is a console in its like they're acting as if it's in the context of the games industry, where it's like Xbox had exclusives and now Game Pass is trying to get exclusives and that sort of stuff. Do you feel like, this open question, do you feel like that dynamic might shift to be a bit more like Spotify in the way that the amount of money that you get back as a developer isn't as strong as it is at the moment, where people are trying to get the streaming services are trying to get developers onto their streaming service.
Look, I really hope not, because the kind of cheap answer that's come from Spotify and other streaming services is that unless you're huge, you don't go on streaming services to make money. You go on them to get fans, and then you make your money through live shows and merchandise. So if you have game studios then having to make money through merchandise,
that's right.
That is not a pretty picture.
Yeah, like
Which
what happens?
Might change now. I mean, SMG Studios put out a Twitter post recently saying they're they're discontinuing all their physical merchandise because it's not,
Environmentally friendly, I think it was.
Yeah. I didn't realize all their stuff was radioactive, but there you go. No, I'm kidding. I understand why they would have cancelled it.
But, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting dynamic to see that.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see what happens. I mean, because Netflix has been around for a while now. I can't speak on the movie industry, but, it's a subscription model, the same. So
yeah.
I don't think that they're relying on merch.
But see,
those your Star Wars.
Yeah, but see, again, like the difference between Netflix is probably more like Xbox Game Pass because they are paying for content to be. Netflix used to be like that, and then they've shifted, like, I don't know, 10 years ago to making their own original IP. Whereas, say YouTube, right? YouTube, how much original IP do they put out? Really? None. Like they had,
and when they do, who cares?
They had YouTube Red for a while. I don't even know what happened to that. Where they were, I think Cobra Kai and things like that, like was coming out of there. But I don't even know. I think that maybe got discontinued where they were paying creators. But it was creator first. It still is. Like YouTube creators. Well, some of them that are really popular get heaps, but some of the smaller ones they don't get much. And it's probably more like Spotify now.
That YouTube Music thing. Like, I switched to YouTube Music from Spotify last year because I read that YouTube Music were giving artists double what Spotify was doing. But I don't know if that's still the case. Cause
I read that as well, and I also made that switch partly also because I just use YouTube a lot and get my phone doesn't go to sleep when I lock it, kind of thing. But then the last I heard, it was actually less than Spotify.
Oh, wow.
So
really? So I just shifted completely.
Well, I don't know. I guess it's changing. I haven't looked at it recently, but
YouTube has this. Sorry, continue.
I was just going to say, it's definitely like I definitely don't put my music on Spotify to make money. That dream died a long time ago. For me, it's again, devil's advocate to them. They've made a fantastic platform. And I mean, and not just Spotify now, the rest are doing it too. Yes, I'm not making a lot of money off of it, but anyone can listen to my music anytime they're connected to the internet. Any release I want to make, I can do myself from my chair. I'm sitting right here, kind of thing. So,
yeah.
You just reminded me, Susanna, when you were saying that. I was watching. I don't know if you guys have seen this because I didn't. I'm also a YouTube Premium subscriber. And so, like, I got some email about it, but it looks like they're doing the same thing as now Twitch, where you can do donations. So, like, I've got streamers I follow on YouTube. Like, they record their Twitch streams and they put the VODs on YouTube. And now they're called Thanks. So, I'll send you guys this screenshot. I'll show you what I mean. It appears here in the bottom. It goes like, dislike, share, thanks. Where's our thing? The base rate, it says, is $2. Is this? Here we go. And then I was looking it up, and I think YouTube keeps 30% of it,
of course.
roughly. Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's like Patreon.
But,
they're like trying to shortcut Patreon.
Yeah, it says show support with super thanks. So $2 thanks, $5, $10, $50. Doesn't look like you can do a custom amount. You say buy and send, and then to learn more, it says something about it's a one-time. They're calling it a clapping animation that will be shown to you over the top of the video as an added bonus.
It's a donation, basically.
Yeah. They're calling them super thanks.
Subscription
but they need 30%
as well.
of it.
Yeah.
I think you can, because I joined one of those probably about 6 months ago as a subscriber, and you get perks, which are kind of like Twitch perks, where you get specific emojis in the chat or whatever. And I think you can get certain unlisted content. You get access to that. So it is pretty much a combination of Patreon and Twitch.
And
but I discontinued it pretty shortly afterwards because I had no need for it. So.
And I noticed that Spotify has a similar function, but they're not in the gaming industry. They have there's a band that I follow that I know has their thing. It basically, you do a transfer through the Cash App, I think it is. This band I love, and if you go to some bands' homepages on Spotify. They've taken it off because it was for COVID support. Yeah, it wasn't like a function built into it permanently. It was a COVID relief thing. So you would go to a band who'd signed up for it, and it would say make a donate. And I'm pretty sure it was through the Cash App, which is an American, money transfer app. And it's super weird because then you click on it, and it's like the name of the account of like the musician themselves, like not the band, or it's not like some third party. It's like this is kind of weird.
Well, Cash App is owned by
Jack Dorsey, isn't it?
Jack Dorsey, who now owns Tidal, which is a Spotify.
Does he?
competitor.
He owns Tidal now.
Yeah. So
Right, because so Jack Dorsey, who was one of the co-founders of Twitter, and then recently left like a couple months ago. He started Square as well, payments, and Cash App.
Oh, yeah.
And
then they just rolled it all together into, it's called Box or something. It's some other square-shaped thing.
And
it's meant to be a
Afterpay as well now.
multiversal platform for all their apps.
just everything.
Yeah, it was with the Cash App. $1 million relief effort for artists during the challenging times. But I wonder if they could. You reckon that would benefit from it, like a permanent donation? Because I gave a few artists some like $20 here and there because I've never, like, even if you've got free Spotify, it's kind of like I've listened to podcasts forever, never had to pay anything. You just kind of want to like show some kind of support, especially artists, as you said before, John. They're making their money from the live music, so if that's gone,
So
maybe
Epic
be awesome.
or Steam or someone should implement something like that.
Just as another parallel to the games, Bandcamp was basically itch for music back in the day, and it still is. But I think with streaming, I know I've personally used it a lot less, but it's one of the pay what you want websites. You can usually get stuff for free, or pay what you want. So that's a good way. I mean, Patreon's good as well, but it's always hard to know how to support the artist the best.
Yeah, and it feels like you have to, as a content creator. I imagine, I don't have a Patreon, but I feel like you'd feel like you'd now have to offer more. Like what you're offering at a base rate isn't good enough. I have to incentivize you to actually pay me for the free work.
And maybe this is something. I hope it doesn't get to this, but I know with certain musicians as well, I've asked them, what's the best way to kind of support you, and it's generally like directly just transfer your money to this bank account or something, or they'll generally tell you like whichever one they prefer. I know I bought a compilation album of one of my favorite musicians. He was like one of the songs on it, and I messaged him afterwards. I'm like, hey, I just bought this album, just wondering how much you get from this. And he was like, oh yeah, not that, I got ripped off for that and got paid $50.
Oh, no.
And it's now since got like 100,000 downloads or something. So, I mean, hopefully that's not the case with studios where you have to go to them directly and ask them, what's the best way to support you. But it's a good discussion to have, though.
Yeah, for sure. Changing it up a bit, John, you want to talk about...
Yes, we're talking about
Pokemon.
indie studios and Nintendo not giving refunds. So I want to talk about the indie studio Game Freak.
That cute little studio.
Risen from the ashes.
New little thing we're hearing about.
Godspeed.
Yeah, they're definitely no Niantic. So. Anyway, so I came across this article about Pokemon Legends Arceus, however you want to pronounce it, talking about how players are spending forever in just the first area. And when I saw this article, a lot of people around me were playing the game, and I wasn't, and they were all loving it, and I was like, I've kind of been burnt by Pokemon a number of times, so I'm kind of like, I wasn't going to do it. But eventually I saw this article, I'm like, well, it must be good if people were spending 10 plus hours in the first area. So I actually ended up then downloading it, giving it a shot, and I really like it. For any Pokemon fans out there, it is very good creative direction. So, but I also thought this was interesting because it's kind of reflective of how a lot of games are trying to go open world. And this game does the first open world area particularly well. But I wanted to bring it up for you guys' thoughts of your experiences with open world games. Do you like these open world massive areas at the start of games, or do you find that overwhelming?
Depends. I'll go last because I jumped in on the last one. So actually, I'm keen to hear Susanna because you're very narrative driven, and open world and narrative is an interesting balance.
Yeah, it puts me off. I don't not like it, but I go, oh, do I have the time to commit to this? Whereas like with the narrative game that's got like X amount of playtime, I prefer smaller games because it's less of a commitment that I have to make. Right? Like if I'm going into an open world game, like, yeah, it looks beautiful and there's heaps of stuff I can do, but I feel like it might have MMO effect on me where like I don't sleep because, I need to look at this area completely and there's a rock over there and oh my god, I'll look at it in the morning, but no, oh now it's 4 a.m. Okay. Like, so I'm careful, but it does look really beautiful and I would like to check it out if I can allow myself to.
It is definitely dangerous like that. Yeah.
My thought is it depends on the way the game is designed. So, 3 examples that I can quickly try and summarize. Breath of the Wild, of course, is the cliche one that I think does it the best because there's so much content, but it's so bite-sized because it uses the same theory as the entire console. A Nintendo IP made for the Switch is handheld. They know that you're either playing it for a 2-hour setting or you're playing it for 15 minutes on public transport. So they kind of keep that focus. So where a game that's doing really well in open world, but I actually personally, and you guess what I think, don't like, is Halo. I don't think Halo does it well because Halo, they're still doing the whole narrative-driven thing where, each section is cinematic. It ties into this giant cutscene. Progresses the story, but Halo's known for being, you can repeat it, you can go back to it because these are epic moments. You don't want to play a whole game to get to a cutscene that happens 75% of the way in or feel that moment, but that's pretty much gone to you, and they don't give you that chance to like go back to the area and replay the mission. That's gone, especially when they tie achievements into that. You have to start a whole new file all over again just to get to that point. And I haven't seen really anyone bring that up online, so I guess most people are cool with that. But to me, it just feels like an oversight. And then the last example is a bit of an old game, but Metal Gear Solid 5, which had a really fun open world to traverse, but had nothing to do in it. And the things that had to do in it was repeated all the time. And every time you loaded into it, you have to watch a credit scene where Kojima pat himself on the back for every job. And yeah, there was just nothing to do in that world. So yeah, Zelda does it great. Halo, I don't think did it very well, and Metal Gear didn't do it any justice. So it all depends on what the content is inside the open world.
So it's kind of around that aim, isn't it? It's like, is there something to do, and is it targeted? Like, do you know what you have to do, and are you able to do it without going to, traveling for an hour, like aimlessly? It's kind of, yeah.
Does it feel like a grind?
Yeah. Because I'm the same. Like, open world games, I don't play too many, but when I play them, I just get overwhelmed with how much there is, and then I just think like I don't have the time for this. But when it's so targeted in terms of like I know what I have to do and where I have to go, and it's tied, like very closely tied to the narrative, I don't have an issue traversing that 20-30 minutes to get to where I need to be. And I'm someone that doesn't really do all the side quests and go down all those different paths. I just want to do the main narrative, and I want it because it's like purposeful. Like I'm spending my time on this. Like I want it to feel like it has some meaning to it.
Yeah, like you're achieving what you set out to do.
Yeah. But then on the flip side, I do enjoy like an MMO because I feel like because there's other people in the same environment, it feels productive in a way as well. Like it feels kind of, again, meaningful or purposeful because there's other people playing and we're all playing at the same time, and I guess that's the effect of an MMO.
What MMOs were you playing?
I was big into. I played World of Warcraft for a little bit, like 2 months, and then I was like, started getting addicted. I was like, I got to cut this. And then Old Republic, that was one that I really loved. Yeah,
that's my sink MMO. Like I can't touch it anymore.
But yeah, that was those two.
So for some context, this game, Pokemon Legends, is fairly narrative focused. I've seen so far. But it kind of does that thing of kind of gradually expanding the, I guess, fence around you. So you start very small and it gradually expands. Personally, so on contrast, Minecraft is a game I could never get into because to me, it was too free. Like what you were saying, Costa. I had no idea what I needed to do in there. And I kind of didn't really care to find out because it was kind of like I didn't really know where to start kind of thing. Obviously, a lot of people love that game, so that's not anything about the game. This game, I'm finding, has hooked me more, probably partly because I have the history, I understand kind of Pokemon games a bit more, but I think more so it does have that kind of, increasing fence line, let's say. And to go back to the last topic, I think this one actually hooks you well at the start, which is something not a lot of the previous games have done. And not a lot of open world games do that well, where they kind of just drop you into the endless void, and you go.
So why is it that they're spending so long in the open area? I'm sorry, in the first area. It's just because of that. It's like the mechanics are tight.
Yeah.
There's a fair bit to explore there. Part of the mechanic is that you kind of there's collectibles and all that stuff, but you also you go and you catch different Pokemon and. You kind of your Pokedex in it. You go in, and each Pokemon has different research tasks. For example, defeat this many of the Pokemon, catch this many of it, use this certain type of move on it. It's kind of like mini missions for each Pokemon, and so you have like a whole lot of kind of mini side quests on top of like actual side quests, on top of the actual like narrative storyline. So it is. I think a narrative story that runs through kind of big spaces that are open to that exploration to a certain extent.
Is that main character wearing bread bags on their feet?
Yeah, I know, they kind of look like it.
It's interesting.
Well, you don't like my bags.
It's interesting, like I'm reading in the article, and seems like they've changed a little bit of the exploration stuff from the existing Pokemon games. Like it says here, unlike in previous Pokemon games where you're working off a pre-programmed Pokedex, in Arceus, or however you say it, you're filling out the very first dex from scratch, meaning you have to engage with the same Pokemon dozens of times before you can max out its individual entry. This means you're not just one and done collecting or grinding purely for XP. These data collection efforts earn you money and also increase your Galaxy team ranks, which in turn unlocks recipes for new items to aid you in your research. The net result is a satisfying progression loop that's still ultimately in the service of the game's main attraction, helping you discover, capture, and learn about new Pokemon. So it's cool they've like changed
without this trying to be an advert or anything, because not everyone will like it. They've changed a number of things about it without completely changing the actual core of what Pokemon is. The battle system's slightly different. It's a lot more seamless between just running around and battling and stuff like that. It works slightly differently. And I think that's probably maybe a separate point is I don't know what's going on at the studio, but it is interesting they actually made these decisions, whether they're planning to spin this off as a separate side series or whether they're going to focus their energies here now. They've definitely, like, some decisions were made that certain things weren't working or let's try something different. And I mean, everyone I've talked to has really liked these new changes.
It seems like a different style, but when I read this article, I'm like, they've hit the nail on the head. This game is an exploration game, and people are spending 10 hours in the first level. You know what I mean? Like, the designers knew what they were doing. Like, they had a kind of player in mind, and just based on these results, it's like they're hitting that because people are just spending hours and hours exploring.
It says that your Pokemon can interact with each other too, which is pretty cool. Like, whereas,
spoilers.
Like any other games. Sorry.
No,
I think that's cool. Because, you're always kind of like, oh, okay, I got these Pokemon and they're following me around and they're in these balls and, whatever.
In your bag.
But, none of them are Pikachu. None of them can come and, interact with each other, and they don't seem to have relationships. But this is kind of cool. Like, you can maybe, I don't know how in depth it goes, but giving more character to them as like members of your party rather than just like
very much.
Things.
Well, so I mean, it's not really a spoiler because it's early in the game. You're basically part of the village that have just invented the very first Pokeballs.
Ooh.
And
cool.
then you're also helping these other clans set in feudal Japan, feudal kind of imperial Japan.
That's awesome.
Neighboring clans don't yet use that technology, nor do they necessarily believe it's right. But they bring up, other things about it. It's like the Pokemon's choice to go on the Pokeball. There's the actual game story. I've only played probably, 8 hours of it or something like that.
Do they say it's the Pokemon's choice to go on the Pokeball?
Yeah, they actually do, which I thought was an interesting...
Every game has made it pretty clear. You throw it at its head.
Well,
you weaken it and then
I'll leave it up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Give it berries or whatever.
Yeah.
It struggles. It literally says it broke free. No, it wants to be in there.
Well, no, they still do that too. Look, we'll leave that discussion for a specific episode about this game.
That's really cool.
In that different episode, can we talk about why Mr. Mime should not exist? Also, just,
Jinx.
We certainly can. Oh man, that'd be great Pokemon episode. But I mean, the story in this as well. It's kind of set in the for the Pokemon nerds out there, the Sinnoh Generation 4 kind of area, but it's set in the past, and so what you're seeing in the story, there's a lot of kind of like historical things that actually link up with, you might see the ancestors of old characters and things like that. And is definitely, like you said, Susanna, more kind of fleshed out than a lot of other games. Like I said, this is not an advert for it, but I wanted to discuss the open world aspect though, because a lot of games are heading that way.
It all sounds, really good, and I'm almost convinced. Does it autosave?
You can turn that off, but it does. Yes.
I want it to autosave.
Yep.
Okay, so I had. Oh my god.
Trauma.
Yeah, I had.
Poke trauma.
I have trauma from Let's Go Pikachu. 10 hours in that game. I am used to the autosave feature. My game crashes, I lose 10 hours of work because I just put my Switch to sleep. That's all I do. And I refuse to play that game ever again. So if this has autosave, then well done, Nintendo. You have earned my money in particular.
Talking about features that should have been in games like 20 years ago, Nintendo's just putting them in there.
Yeah. And they still have the
that's
old-fashioned
crazy.
save. Like, you'd have to pause. I just wasn't expecting that. Oh. But yeah, if it has that, I'm 100% on board.
Anyway, on that note, we should probably hand over to Costa for another interesting article about, I'm just reading this, Shadow Gangs. What's that?
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of old school games, old school consoles. So I like the Sega Dreamcast, which was a console that came out in 1999. Was the last Sega console that came out, and it's still receiving new games to this year. Like, there's still games coming out for this console. So there's a game that's just been announced called, well, it's not been announced, but it's called Shadow Gangs, and they have a Kickstarter out at the moment, and it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Again, like, this is a console that came out in 1999, so there's technical limitations on the kind of games that can come out. But it's a game that came out on Steam and Xbox in 2020, and a Switch port came out in 2021, and it was a really great game, a lot of positive reviews. And now the developer is actually looking to port it to the Dreamcast. So there's a lot of games like this that come out and have come out over the past few years, where they come out on computer and they come out on Xbox, and then there's always a Switch port, Switch, and then a Dreamcast port that comes out. Just because there's still a thriving community, like a little niche.
That's really cool.
Community.
It's like a cult following.
Yeah, there's a huge cult following in this space. But yeah, I thought would plug it because I'm a Dreamcast fan. So if anyone's keen to see a game on the Dreamcast, it's out on Kickstarter. I think they're looking to raise about 47,000 Australian dollars. They're at 36,000 at the moment. About 22 days to go. Yeah, I mean, check it out. It's pretty cool. It's cool that, like, they're pressing these new games. And I wanted to also add, maybe it's worth sort of thinking about, like, when people make games, do they think about, like, this long-term thing? Do they think about the legacy that their game will have in 10 years? You know what I mean? Do they think that, like, do people think that far along? Like, or is it just kind of, this is something I've got and I want to put it out there? Like, I know Nintendo, you know, or just Japanese companies as a general thing that they do, they look to build companies that last 100 years, not the next 10 years. Like, they always think about legacy. And Nintendo has been around since 1850s. You know, like, it's a company that's endured for so long. So I'm just, what's everyone's thoughts on this, really?
As in the legacy of the... Oh, you're talking about the legacy of the game and not the console, or both?
Both. Like, when someone puts something out, as a creator, when you put something out, do you think of if it has enduring legacy, or is it kind of something that you just think of in the now?
Thought. Yeah.
I'm like, is anyone ever going to like this thing that I made at all?
Right? Yeah, that's a good point, because I think that's a really brave thing to do.
Yeah, like to think
as a creator.
You know, yeah, that's right.
Because you're truly doing it for the love of it. Like, they will most likely not make their money back on that.
Yeah. Well, and they're asking for like a weird amount. It's like not even an even number. It's like it's down to the $2.
Oh, that's weird. It might be a translation, because it says in the original article it's £27,000.
£25,000. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And it's like
£25,000.
33,000 US.
Which, you think about it, that's not much. Like, to
that's not
port
much.
a game, you know, over.
Yeah. I would think. I mean, it. You know, like when you look back to like 2002 or 2001 and like the first Spider-Man movie comes out, and back then we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And like, you're not really thinking, is this going to look good? Now we do, because everything's so online and we have archives of everything. We're like, oh, this is gross. But like back then we're like, oh, this is awesome. Those sunglasses that wrap around your head look sick. And now we look at it and we're like, this is gross. But they probably thought at the time that was going to last forever.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, the Xbox, you know, like most of the original Xbox is like core early 2000s gross Kyle culture, you know, like Kyle culture, hashtag Kyle culture.
Yeah, that's right.
Like,
I saw this TikTok that was like a clip from Titanic, and it was like the CG part from the original Titanic movie where like the captain, he just walks out of the door and walks over to the balcony, right? And it was like so bad CG that I didn't believe that it was in the actual movie. I was like, okay, someone's just trolling with this TikTok. And I went and checked, and it's legit. It's actually in the movie. It's just that, like, back then we were like, we didn't even notice that it was that bad because it was just impressive or whatever. But it looks like it's the worst walk cycle. It's like janky and like it's like a robot. Like you're not. Now you would be like, oh my God, what?
So Titanic, where like in the peak scenes in that movie, the CGI was $1 million a minute. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and you're like, how?
I had a teacher who turned out to be a bit of a con artist, and I can actually say that because there's news articles about this guy. So I don't know if this story is true. If you know me, I'll tell you what the articles are. But he said he worked in the editing room. Well, he was visiting the editing room of Titanic, and James Cameron was in there, and he like pulled out, you know, he's editing it like the old way. You have the film and you cut it with the guillotine. And he reckons he like pulled this strip, cut it, it fell on the floor, and he looks to the teacher and he's just like, that's $1 million right there on the floor, or something like that. But then the guy pretended to be royalty, Polish royalty, so who the hell knows?
I love this story.
Polish royalty, and he's got like 1 minute of Titanic in his pocket.
Oh yeah, probably. Oh my God.
One thing I'm wondering with this story is, not being a Sega... Is it Sega?
Yeah, Sega.
Boy myself. Dreamcast, was that the last console they released?
Last one, yep.
Do you think that helps its enduring legacy? That there was never another Sega console afterwards?
100%. I mean, a lot of the other consoles still have a pretty big following. Like, there's still games. I think there's still games that even come out for like the NES. You know, they're kickstarted. But you're right. There's a cult following because it's the last console that they put out. And so there's still that it's like bitterness, you know, bittersweet, you know.
They like made that game with bitterness.
Yeah, you know, like
Doing this for revenge.
it's like a bittersweet thing. Like it was the last one, and you know, they're kind of trying to keep it going as long as possible. But it is like a lot of the games that come out, they're always pretty good games. Like the games that you know have been a hit on another console, and now they're just looking to port it because it's a game that's quite simplistic in terms of graphics and that sort of stuff. That it is possible to port over to Dreamcast.
So what games or series do all of you think is like timeless that they could just continue on from, or something like that?
Are we going to make this our question to the Discord?
Oh, that's a good idea. We can do that.
let's do
We can
that.
do that.
Maybe
But, let's start with you guys.
is it so, like maybe like stuff that's still like around now that's new that.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. Like what's coming out
Keep
now?
going, Dreamcast.
Wait, if it's not around anymore, it's probably not timeless.
Well, okay, well, yeah. Is that what you're saying, Costa? You're saying what's out now
That
you
will be
could
timeless,
foresee
perhaps.
That will be
becomes
timeless.
Perhaps.
And then we'll have a Booleans reunion in 20 years and be like,
Predictions.
you idiot.
Dude, Booleans is still going to be going in 20 years. What are you talking about?
Of course it will be.
Okay, games. It's hard to not just go like Legend of Zelda or like one of the already.
Yeah,
iconic
that are
franchises.
already.
But
yeah.
you're talking new games like Unpacking.
Ah.
I haven't played it myself, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a few factors into it, and it's also it's worth noting. What are you considering to be timeless? Like, are you looking at the art as timeless? Are you looking at the music as timeless? Are you looking at the narrative, the game mechanics? Like, for like, you know.
are we talking like? Sorry, more clarification here. We talking like this one specific game, or are we talking like the IP? Because, for example,
Costa
Legend of
kinda-
Zelda. Are we saying the first Legend of Zelda is timeless, or are we saying Legend of Zelda
The IP. I don't know.
the IP?
I guess
Okay.
it'd be the IP.
However you want to interpret it.
Nintendo games will be timeless because that's what Nintendo do, right?
Yeah.
They're just like,
All right.
Yeah.
make another Mario. There's another Mario. Do you want another Mario? Who needs
Yeah.
another Mario? I'm going to punch you on the face with Mario's now. Like,
Well, possibly we have a local one with Hollow Knight, depending on what happens there.
Yeah.
That's
Good
got
one.
the strong start.
Very good
that
one.
could be very cool, yeah.
Art-wise, it can be timeless because it's not used. The thing that ages everything is 3D, and they don't have 3D, so there's no hard edges. Like, yeah, I could definitely, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, what about like Cuphead?
I was just
'Cause,
gonna,
like they're getting,
just gonna say Cuphead. That was gonna be the one I was gonna say. Yeah,
and they're getting that Netflix show
Yeah.
like
Oh,
coming
that's
out
right,
next week or whatever.
that's
I
cool
gotta-
because
I
it
gotta-
jumps from just being a game to now like across, you know, a TV. Like it's an IP now. It's just from a game. It's now
Yeah.
IP.
Yeah. Now, could that be? Because that could be timeless, but like, it's based on like what is it, like 20s cartoons or something like
That's
that.
timeless.
Like, so is that timeless, or is it because they've brought it back?
Well, if they keep making Cuphead games and movies,
It's an
I
interesting
think
one.
I think
isn't it?
I think that's the question.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, you're right. Okay. All right. What? It's you have to go real. The timeless stuff is the stuff that's real simple. So if you're
Yeah.
talking narrative, I'm going to guess you have to avoid any kind of politics. I remember I had this conversation with a friend, and I don't know if this kind of relates to this. We tried to start a podcast like in uni about game development,
Blasphemy.
and I asked, huh?
Blasphemy, Alex.
Blasphemy. I know, right? I didn't know you at the time. You weren't born yet. It was. I said, how long? The question I posed was, how long does like time have to pass before? How do I word this? Okay, if you made, well, I guess they do this now. I was thinking, okay, so Call of Duties and stuff, it's like culturally accepted. It seems to be to make games about World War II, World War One, even though like you have family members who lived that and like the horrors with it. I was kind of saying like, what is an acceptable amount of time before you can make a game about the Iraq War or an invasion of North Korea, no, not an invasion of like North Korea invading someone, or Russia doing like Russia, what's going on in Russia at the moment? Can they do a Call of Duty Russia with what's going on at the moment, or would they say that's too soon? Like, but you will know that in 100 years, not even 100 years, in 50 years, if Call of Duty is still going, which let's be honest, they'll do a Call of Duty, but they already do that already. Like, there's already Iraq War.
Yeah, I was going to say Call of Duty does already involve wars that are ongoing. I think that are maybe 5 years old or something like that.
And like Spec Ops, like that was like 2012, and that was about like Middle East wars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's been
But
one.
that had a pretty cool purpose for it. Like,
I'm pretty sure there's been one around like a dystopian future with North Korea as the villain. I don't know. I swear like I've seen one that has done that before. So it's like future potential things, you know?
What's the thing people say is like 10 years after a horrific event is when you're allowed to start making jokes about it?
Yeah.
Tragedy plus time equals
Tragedy
comedy.
plus time,
Yeah. Like, what was it?
Black
It was
Ops
like Call
2.
of Duty.
Black Ops 2 is, and I think Advanced Warfare is North Korea is an antagonist faction.
It really depends how it's done, I guess. If they were laughing about it, it probably wouldn't be funny. But because so there was that Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare 2, I think, where they had the mission in it where you're a terrorist or you play as an undercover terrorist. I can't remember, but you shoot the people in the airport as like an act of terrorism. And like shortly before the game was released, that actually happened, or something similar happened in real life. And so they ended up making that an optional mission, which is a good move, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But they didn't not release it then. They didn't cut it from the game. And I don't think anyone had uproar because they made it kind of, optional.
So do you reckon those games then that depict either a real or like pseudo-real, which is fake, but, you know, like it could be real, does that age it?
It sets it in time.
Because it's always
Especially
but like
sorry.
there's that thing with like games as cultural heritage of like recording histories and incidences and stuff like that. Like a game could be a really cool, like, if something happens to you and you make a game about it, like that's a pretty cool artifact that exists in that time where those memories were fresh to you, or where the people who had those lived experience made it, right? It's like more authentic, and it's like a way of recording that history.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it needs to be careful, but like
make it careful that it didn't actually happen, like,
or
just for speculation.
accurately depicts it, or
or is accurate, I guess. Yeah, whichever. But
Yeah.
You know what does age a lot is future sci-fi.
I was gonna say that.
The moment that year passes, if it's not exactly how it is, everyone's like, ugh.
Well,
where's my hoverboard?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's the beauty of revisiting Alien Isolation, as in Alien Isolation revisiting the Alien franchise, because if you watch the Alien movie, you're like, this is so old, like they're using basically like DOS looking screens and stuff like that. But then Alien Isolation, where that technology has now eclipsed, we go like, oh, okay, there was no technology that looked like that, so now it becomes this like timeless bubble almost. You know?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking like even Back to the Future. What is it about that movie? It's done in such a way where it doesn't really matter that the technology doesn't exist, that we can't take tiny pizzas and hydrate them into full-size pizzas.
There's so much of a focus, I think, in both those Back to the Future movies. It's like the narrative. It's not the technology.
Both.
No, as in
the Back to the Future and the sequel Alien Isolation.
No, I mean the first two being set in the future, because the third one's set in the past. Like they're both. You probably don't realize or look back. I mean, everyone knows the hoverboards and all that sort of stuff, but like the first one's it's a love movie. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a romantic movie, and the second one I can't even really remember the plot. It's probably more sci-fi adventure, that kind of movie. But they focus so much on the narrative that you really don't look back and go, oh, that looks bad.
Yeah, because then when they show that shark hologram, and it's all
still cool.
Poly.
It's still cool.
Come on, man. Come on.
Like a PlayStation 1, that's coming back.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
demo one with the
what's that thing that
the
people,
dinosaur?
People say that like the best sci-fi is actually like the sci-fi part's just a vehicle for philosophy or for kind of social analysis.
Yep.
And I guess if it's doing that right, then it doesn't really matter about the tech part.
Agreed, yeah. If it fits in with the narrative well, if it's not just like solely focused on the sci-fi, the technology.
Wow.
Well.
Susanna.
So, I've been wondering, I know none of you really play a lot of Fortnite, but there's been this cool thing happening in Fortnite in January. And it's still up in creative, but you have to put in a code to get to the map now. But originally, just throughout January, when you launched into creative in Fortnite, if you turned around behind you was a giant art gallery.
Oh, wow.
And inside that art gallery was a copy of the Kaws art installation that's currently on at the Serpentine Art Gallery in London.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
This is cool.
So you could go in and you could walk down all the little gallery passages and look at the Kaws work, like the paintings and like sculptures and all this stuff. And there was like even skins and stuff you could get like in that. But I thought it was really, really cool because like Fortnite, right? Like creative mode. Like you just land, you just turn around and you go, oh look, I can look inside an art gallery. Like how
Yeah, sorry.
many...
At risk of sounding like an old person, what is creative mode in Fortnite?
So it's like not battle royale and not save the world. So it's like go in and build.
Okay,
So
cool.
you can go in and you can build a map and you can share it with your friends, or you can just go in and build stuff like it's Minecraft.
Yeah,
And
but the moment
have a
you
fun
enter that
time.
mode, this museum is already there.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it
cool.
was in January. It was like the launch map for creative mode.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
there's no threat of people shooting you. There's no, like risk in doing so. You've just got as much time in the world as you want to walk around and look at the art. And you don't have to, like if you don't want to. It's just there. There's no reward for doing it. There's no points or anything. It's just like, do you want to look at the art? Cool, have a look if you want. I thought it was really cool because how many... when I was a kid, like my parents didn't have time to take me to an art gallery, right? Like, but I might have wanted to go.
Yeah, totally.
How
This
does
is
that
something with... I'm going to bring up NFTs again.
What's that? An hour 11.
Yeah, there you go. Mark your checkpoints.
Counter.
It's something that I actually really enjoyed when I was exploring that. And now this is not something you need NFTs for, obviously. We're seeing it here. But one thing that was being done is these virtual art galleries and creator made where you could go in and fill it with art that you own or your own art that you've created and stuff. And this, even though it's like
cool.
digital and you're walking around with your third person, there's still something cool about that experience of being able to explore the museum space.
Yeah. It feels very like what those metaverse companies are trying to do, but it's already happening.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How as Susanna, you basically mentioned that you wanted to go to art galleries as a kid, so you've had an interest in art galleries. How does that translate to you? That because I don't have, like me personally, I have patience for art galleries, but I really, really respect people who do, and I envy it. But if you're playing a game that's so brightly colored and visually stimulating, how do you switch off that world around you to just focus on this piece of art that doesn't fit in that world?
Yeah, well, I think that I think Epic have done a really good job here because like if you look at the gallery, it's like bland. It's like desat bricks. Like the ground is like a light grey.
Looks like an actual
they've kind of built
gallery.
this dull kind of so that the art, which is that bright color, stands out really well inside it.
Yeah, that must have been a. I wonder if must have been a. Wait, is that based on a real gallery? Like the architecture and all
Well, it's on display in the Serpentine, but I don't think it looks quite the same. But I don't know if maybe it uses the same bricks or something.
that? Yeah, right.
It's it's really cool.
Is there any trigger volumes in front of the art where if you get too close and touch it, some old security guard comes out and yells at you?
What are you doing?
Actually, I think that would make it better
Cool.
because there's always been that kind of respect with an art gallery of like this has to be revered. But if you're a game, I think that's another thing I was getting at. I was like, this game you can jump around and destroy stuff, but it's telling you to be quiet for like 5 minutes and look at this art. Like, what stops you just shooting it?
You can still run around and do stupid emotes in front of the like people are always doing dumb dances in front of the art and stuff. You can still do that. It's just you got a nice backdrop, I guess, for your selfies and stuff.
I like the way.
Go, Costa.
I was gonna say I like the way it outlined. It's basically a Trojan horse for pop art. Because people think of this game in being battle royale and all that sort of stuff, and like the younger people that play it as well. But then when you go in there and you see this sort of stuff, it's like someone might not have been interested in seeing this, but it's there, and you'll go and explore it, and then now you've been exposed to this art that you wouldn't.
Yeah, to stuff that you might not have been exposed to before, like whether because your parents like mine were like too busy to take you to an art gallery, or because of COVID, because you can't go out, or like whatever. You can still and I think there's. I feel like maybe Epic are doing a good thing here, like saying we've got all this power, like maybe we should be doing some sort of something more than just the game with the power that we've got.
There's a problem with museums and art galleries where they only display like 30% of what they actually have in their collection because they don't have the space. And Costa, you remember this?
The museum.
Yeah, the museum had that. What did they call it? Was it? I can't remember if the company that won it was called Sandpit or if their project was called Sandpit.
The company that won it. So it was a challenge, I think. To digitize or come up with a virtual way of representing all the items that the museum holds but doesn't display because there's not enough space. And I can't remember. This was a challenge in South Australia a few years ago, and a company had won it called Sandpit. But yeah,
was it to do with Aboriginal art as well?
I think it had a component of that. So I remember there was a cool concept where there would be pieces of like Aboriginal artifacts that could be told through a virtual Aboriginal elder, and it would kind of like, I think it was some AR component to it where you would put your phone and I don't know. Anyway, there was like a cool AR concept of it, and there was a lot of cool concepts that came through that project. But I'm assuming that would be something that's around the world. There's probably a lot of art galleries and museums that have collections that aren't on display because of physical space limitations.
That maybe you can kind of do something like that. Because they had in Fortnite too a while ago, they have these live events where they have musicians come and do things, and they did they had that Tones and I, that dance monkey.
Don't know who that is.
And I don't know, it's something my kid likes. And
blame the kid.
And you what they did is they had a live performance inside Fortnite, but they had you kind of playing through the soundtrack. So a bit like what that the Radiohead, the Kid Amnesiac thing inside Unreal did too, where you kind of played through the song. And as you went through different sections of the song, you did different things, went into different rooms, and then it played the next part of the song, or you kind of fell through the floor for a particular part that was maybe super high tempo, and they kind of put you inside the music video in a way.
Yeah. That's so cool. Because I think, because you've got that interactivity and it can transform over time, like you're saying, which is awesome. But also just real museums, which we don't currently get from JPEGs, is sense of space and sense of scale. So you've always kind of got your character there, and if it's a big piece, like we're seeing in the picture here, you're looking up at it, and it's quite a huge kind of painting. And the other thing I saw when I was looking at the NFT galleries is, I know Alex, you were talking about scary sounds, but I actually really like the spatial audio you get in there. So you can walk past a painting that calls out to you, or is playing music that you like. And that's actually what my experience was, is I walked past a painting that was it was looped video, and it was playing this really cool kind of hip-hop beat, and it actually made me want to go check it out. So you then have that spatial thing going. But But then also just the very fact that in these galleries you start seeing 10-second loop videos becoming their own kind of genre of medium itself. And that is
cool, yeah.
that's opened up here as well, I guess.
The NFT layer on top of that would be like you could own a piece of that, or you could own that art, and then maybe you could even like rent it out to an art gallery, and you could, there's so much like you're just talking about the digital ownership component of it.
It also increases what you can do with it, like what a digital painting is. You can make Ganondorf come out of it on his horse.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Or you can jump into it.
Yeah, like Mario.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of when I saw this, actually.
Oh, that's awesome. It's getting me excited because I think this is when we bring up NFTs, and I'm not hating on them, but I think there are so many cool ideas coming out of that space which don't need to be tied to NFTs, and I think this is one of them.
Yeah,
and I'd love to see a lot of those ideas just be fleshed out separately first.
Well, exactly. Here's like a concept that doesn't need it. Like it's being it's being implemented right here, and it doesn't actually use NFTs.
Yeah. And there's things like just the accessibility element of it is really cool to me. Like, if you think about things like the live shows, like they had that Travis Scott show inside Fortnite as well, but like you could fly around and like look from above and stuff. So like if you can't go to live shows for like whatever reason, like, you might not have been to a gig before, you might not be able to go to gigs because of COVID or, accessibility issues, but you can go to this, you can fly above and you can have whatever view you want and you can kind of like be a part of it, and like you might not be able to do those things. It's pretty cool.
That would be really interesting for people who suffer from like claustrophobia or social anxiety and kind of things like that as well. I don't know whether you would still get that from being amongst digital people, but I'm sure like you said, you can fly above the crowd or whatever, that possibly opens up these experiences to people that would otherwise have too much anxiety to go and attend.
It's just interesting, right? Like a game to be doing all this. Like you said, it's this metaverse idea. It's like, what else can we be? What else can we? It's really interesting.
They have like the financial freedom to explore because they're not really, they already got a successful game, so it's kind of like, what else can we do with this game?
Yeah, what can we do with this world, I guess, isn't it, at this point? Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. Costa.
Yeah. Going back
Costa, you got to segue us. Come on, man.
Speaking about new experiences and researching experiences.
At least you didn't say, speaking of video games.
So this is more of an announcement, but there's a pretty cool summit that happens every year. Usually is hosted in North America, but this year it's going to be hosted online. So it's the Games User Research Summit. For anyone who isn't familiar, it's part of the Games User Research IGDA group. So it's all around like user research for games, user experience, design, processes, user testing. So it's a pretty cool event to check out. And I just want to plug the Discord as well. There's a Discord, Games User Research, so GRUX SIG community on Discord. I'll drop the link to the conference as well. But it's a really cool Discord. I recently joined because I'm trying to do some playtesting, and I'm organizing some playtesting for a game. And I jumped in there, and there was like such a cool experience of you go into the Discord and you pick like, your early stage, like early part of your career, you're a researcher or you're a game designer or whatever your role is, and then it kind of curates the channels based on that. But there's a really cool community there of researchers that you can just flick a message and you get a response like almost straight away. I had a couple of questions in there around running remote playtesting sessions, and I just dropped a message in the tools channel, and within like 2-3 hours I had 5 or 6 responses from like PhD researchers who do playtesting for games like on get like Sony games and like Fortnite and all these really big companies, and they're all just in this little Discord community, and you can just reach out to them like with a message. And it's interesting because I've been reading a book about games user research, and the author was the person who responded to me in the Discord, and I was like,
That's cool.
I was like so over the moon by that, because I'm always taking his advice, through the book, but then I was able to just like interact with them through this Discord. So yeah, if anyone's interested, the conference is on May 19th, May 20th. It's an event for industry professionals interested in games, user research, user experience. Again, including but not limited to user testing, game analytics, user experience design and processes, and literally has gone from a handful of researchers to like thousands of attendees. There's a lot of different streams, panels, workshops, and different like methods and tools that they showcase to leverage player data and the psychology behind game design as well. So yeah, check it out, and hopefully everyone can attend.
Yeah, awesome. UX design and UI and stuff like that, I think, is so important. And I guess my example isn't strictly games, but I think it is connected. When it comes to making music, I used a program called FL Studio for about 10 years. And it does awesome work. It's like you could get a free demo and make heaps of stuff with it. It does everything you need it to do. But then I tried Ableton Live, another piece of software, at a friend's house. That was actually Dakota, who we'll have on the show at some point. And I found that you could do a lot of the same things, but with less clicks, less menus you had to get through. And eventually I decided to make the switch and give it a proper shot. And what I found is, even though it seems like, doing an extra click here and there is laziness, when you're doing something creative, what that is one less barrier from your head to the page. And it actually, having that kind of good UX design, good UI design and stuff like that is, a game changer for creative stuff. So, excuse the pun. So I don't know if you guys find with games as well, like it can be the difference between enjoying a game and not, I guess.
It's interesting from the game's perspective, because when you're doing UX or UI on traditional software, it's always like get the job done as quickly as possible. Like there's never, like satisfaction is not always the top priority. It's just kind of like if it's if it's doing something really bleak, or you're ordering insurance, you know what I mean, or something like that through a website. Like it doesn't have to be the most enjoyable thing. Like it's not really that enjoyable, and so things like the speed at which you can do it and the ease of which you can do it is always like at the top of just go in, get it done, and get out, and you can do it as fast as possible and as easy as possible. Then there you go. But with games, you've got that whole layer of enjoyment. Like people need to enjoy the experience, and I think there's a really cool part in that book, the Games User Research book, which was like Mario, if it was the best UX, not taking into account that it's a game, would just be like one button that says save the princess, and you'd press it and the game would be done, right? So the game, like a game, is a challenge, so you have to work in that friction, obviously, to be able to play the game and have the challenges to go through. But if you're struggling to actually play the game, then that's an issue. If you're struggling to use the controls, if you're struggling to press the right buttons, or navigate through menus, or even something as simple as like hit something in the game or interact with something in the game, then that's where UX is so important in games, to just streamline that process.
Totally. This is something I found when I was playing a lot of the Game Jam games that just came from the Game Jam just gone. And I mean, in 48 hours, you do not have time to do UX or proper UI and stuff like that. So no one's fault really. But there were definitely games there that I thought looked interesting. But after about a minute of not being able to work out how to control my character properly or what I was meant to do, I just gave up. And then that is the difference between playing a game and not playing it.
Yeah, for sure.
And we were talking with, was it Serica who said this about like the not need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to UX. Like UX is all about a narrative. Like doesn't matter, even what you said, like ordering insurance, right? There's a narrative to ordering or looking up insurance. So that you're not expecting to save a princess or something ordering insurance. Like, it should follow the beats. There should be similar things. And yeah, don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was also Gillian who mentioned it. Always designing something using like making something super familiar. Like if for example, if you're playing in the context of video games, if you're playing a first-person shooter, you're used to the left. Say on a controller, the left stick is to move. The right stick is to look around. Like, you're not going to swap that all of a sudden in your game like that. Reinventing the wheel in that context isn't actually being helpful. Even on a keyboard, like, people are used to WASD for moving around in certain kinds of games, first-person games. You're not going to change it to like TFGH. Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, what is that going to? People are familiar with it, so it's just going to make things actually more difficult.
As someone who was born with a hand in the center of my chest, that's exactly how I play games, and I have to constantly remap it. It's a sore point, so thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, totally. I understand.
Alex,
That sounded weird. I understand.
I'll segue this onto you, Alex.
So we have an understanding.
Yeah, all right. Last story. There's a reason why I'm taking the segue in this, which we can go into, which is Sony buying Bungie for $3.6 billion. Come on, Sony, it's old. We were buying companies last week. We don't do this anymore. And yeah, the reason why I'm segueing it is really, I was talking to a friend about this. Someone was hoping would come into the cafe, but I guess they're getting held up. Basically, I don't play PlayStation. I don't play any Bungie games, so this has no bearing on me. So I had a friend ask, what's my opinion on this? And I just literally, in the exact words, I said, I don't really care. I don't know if I said really. I think I just said I don't care. And that was taken as, I don't care what you have to say, what anyone has to say. It more meant, oh, what do you think about Sony buying Bungie? I don't care. Because it has no bearing on me.
From now on, Alex, make sure you just be like, I am completely neutral on this subject.
Yeah.
Please tell me your opinion.
I don't care what you have to say.
Yeah.
That's probably why that hasn't come on today.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he doesn't want to. I told him it'd be about this. And he's like, "Great, we're gonna relive this." So, but look, it's still an important story, and as people who have a game podcast, it's probably important that I know about this, or could get at least educated about this and what this means. But I mean, we kind of covered what it means to acquire a company in the Activision purchase and stuff like that. But something that's interesting about it is that Bungie's remaining an independent subsidiary of Sony Interactive after the buyout, which is pretty interesting. So
yeah, it's good. It's interesting they made a point of that as well, I think. Because that is a question that came up with the other buyouts recently, is how much creative control do they still have? So Sony's probably using that as a, look at us, we're giving them plenty of creative control.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like that, like the other ones, like in what Dan was saying in a previous podcast, is just like more kind of revenue streams for the big companies. Like, okay, cool, let's like see if we can get more income from Bungie as well. And
maybe this is like a game of Monopoly where they're buying up everything and then they're planning to, in late game, try and make trades with the other companies. So like they're going to try and sell Bungie back to Microsoft for double the price.
Or it goes,
we just got a hotel in it.
they basically have a gun to Bungie's head since Microsoft took Activision. They're like, let's all be cool here. Don't make this a Xbox exclusive. We all walk out of here safe.
Pretty much.
because Destiny, I think at the moment actually is on Game Pass.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's funny because like Bungie was owned by Microsoft up until 2010, and then they became independent, obviously losing Halo as well in the process. Microsoft retained Halo, but then they signed a 10-year deal with Activision, and then they just got out of that 10-year deal in 2020. So they were Activision was essentially exclusively publishing all Bungie games, which at the time and still is Destiny. So they've kind of gone, and now Microsoft owns Activision. It's kind of they just escaped Microsoft. You know, like Microsoft would have bought Activision if they're in that same deal. It still would have been under Microsoft, but they've narrowly escaped them again. But yeah, I wonder if this will enable them to do more games in different areas, or if they'll just continue on with Destiny for the next 10 years.
Would be interesting. Should we talk about one of the biggest acquisitions that have happened recently, which is Wordle being acquired by the New York Times?
Yes.
What's with Wordle?
I haven't played it yet,
it's
but
too hard.
I've seen it everywhere.
It's for smart people. I'm out.
Do you read the New York Times, Susanna? Well, you're probably not their audience then.
Yeah, that's why, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't played it either, but look, I say that as a joke, but I think it is interesting that we're seeing it at the same time as all these other big acquisitions, that we're actually seeing a non-game company buying.
And it is huge, right?
Yeah.
Like, all my non-gamer friends play Wordle. Like,
Yeah.
This.
Yeah, that thing you
yeah,
sent
the
Twitter.
thing with the squares, you have to guess the word.
I
It gives you like 5 chances or something, and you have to guess the exact word. And like when you have to type in a 5-letter word, and then it tells you how many of those letters are in the word and how many of them are in the right place. And then you guess again, and then it like, you know, gives you that again, and then you guess again, and you got to try and get the word in this.
It's such a simple game, but the whole concept of sharing, is it you share your results? Is that what it is? It just creates this virality, like that everyone gets onto it.
Yeah, it gives you like an image of like how long it took you to get the green, which is like the more right. So like you got this grid, and it'll be like this person had a yellow, and then they had 2 yellows, and then they had 3 greens or whatever, and then they got like the whole word, and everyone's like, "Look at me, I got it in 3," because they're like smarter, and I'm like,
So this is like
I once got
Mastermind.
one in 5.
Yeah. So this
Have
is
you
like that
guys-
old school Mastermind game, right?
Which one?
I don't know. Is that how that works?
Remember?
I remember that
you go
one.
to your
where-
auntie's house, and that's the only game she has.
Yes, it was only ever family relatives. It was only ever relatives that had it, and it was like, oh man, I remember like the picture on that box, like it's like
The weird
60s
CEO
spy.
with the
and
with
his
the
assistant,
or whatever.
assistant, the sexy secretary or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like you probably couldn't put that on a board game now, but
No, yeah.
but it's the thing where because you had like you had to choose 4 colors, I think it was in a row, and then you hide it behind this little like plastic.
Is this what you're
Shield,
talking
I guess.
about? Is this the
And the
color
other
you're
person-
talking about? Sorry, I'm just like, just have a look at. Is that it?
I guarantee it is.
Well, it probably is. And
Yeah, and you'd have
We're all
to.
looking at this.
Yeah, we're waiting for
Oh no,
this.
I put it in the. It's all right.
sorry, we'll cut this. That's the exact one.
Oh.
Yes, Costa. That is the
Yeah.
one. That is the one. Look, she looks like she doesn't even want to be there.
Game of the year. Oh my god.
I bet you that picture wasn't even taken for this board game. It was just like
It's probably
a
selling it
stock
off for
photo
show
or something.
Yeah.
Or they were told that it was for like Time magazine or something. Anyway, so you have to guess the 4 colors, and you get, what is it, like 10 shots or something, and then
Yeah.
you get fired from your job.
It sounds like that Wordle is. Yeah, then you get fired from your job. What?
You're fired.
It must be a big thing, because I typed Wordle into Google, and the little Google logo in the top left corner changed to this animation that says colon.
It's
Yeah, I
like
saw that too.
It's huge. It's legit huge. Like everyone.
I just got off Facebook, and like as I was getting off it, like my whole feed was full of those like green and yellow squares, and I'm like, I can't
Oh
wait to
my
not
God.
learn what this is about.
How good's this though?
I'm
It was developed by Josh Wardle. Like
What?
he
That's-
literally just took his last name and changed one word in it,
Word.
and that's now the name of the
Yeah,
game.
Oh,
Was it acquired
That's
for something
hilarious.
like 40 million? And it was just the one developer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think so.
He would have been dumb
That's
not to
amazing.
get like acquired, because this is something that's I mean it might endure, but it's a fad right now. Do you know what I mean? Like it's really popular right now, but it could easily die down quite soon. So it's smart that he sold it now that it's kind of at this really,
And
Yeah.
I guess in some ways it's the successor to the crossword as well, which is you would probably get in the New York Times, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says he created the puzzle game for his partner, who loves word games.
Oh,
Well,
that's
that's
awesome.
romantic.
Created the prototype of the
Yeah.
game
That's
in
cute,
2013 and decided to revisit the game during the pandemic.
There you go, guys.
And-
The answer is love.
Yeah.
You want to become successful at video games?
Josh
Love.
Wardle is an artist, product manager,
Oh,
and
he's
software engineer at Reddit. Interesting.
Ah.
Same.
Ooh.
Very cool.
All right. Well, something that we didn't get to cover this week, but we're hoping next fortnight we'll do a review of the SA games from the Global Game Jam that just happened. So hopefully we can get some devs on. We can play through some games on the stream, get the devs on from them and talk about their 48-hour experience and what their thoughts were going into it and the theme. And also worth mentioning, awesome job, Susanna, at facilitating along with Amelia.
Yes.
But a round of applause is deserved.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who helped and all the jammers too. And yeah, it was a fun weekend. I think we all did well for being online. Like, I think everyone did really well.
How did you
And, yeah, some awesome games.
How'd you find it on the back end?
Yeah, no, I think it went well. Like, it's hard. I think for me, it's always hard online because you can't just walk up to people and say, "How you doing?" You
Yeah.
have to wait for them to approach you. So I'm like, "Oh, is everyone okay?" I don't know because I can't check on them. Or I'm like, "Is everyone okay?" And there's no replies, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't actually see." But I think, hopefully everyone had a good time. And yeah, if you didn't, let me know.
No, and looks like there was some like really good games that came out of this, and just really pretty. Fun
Definitely,
looking
some
things.
really cool concepts. And yeah, it's like 48 hours is about making a prototype, so it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a really cool start.
Yeah, but yeah, it'll be awesome next week. Next fortnight, we'll have some up and running and get some devs in.
Well, I can tell you, Susanna, I had a really good time doing the jam. So
Thank you.
I did-
I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, I had fun for the first night. Then I fell asleep.
Oh man! All right, we're gonna hear your story next episode.
Yeah.
There is no story.
The game jam that never was.
Some say Alex is still sleeping to this day.
I made a like looping music track, and I made a sprite sheet of a fried egg with anxiety and a gun. And that was it.
No, I got like because I was trying to jam as well.
Oh, wow.
But I
Oh.
couldn't like.
Speedrunning.
So I got like I was because we were making a tabletop RPG. And I got one artifact made because we had like found artifacts, and I got one photo photoshopped, and that was it. So
No,
yeah,
well,
I'll
fair
join you
for
in
trying.
the revisit, Alex. We'll try again.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. We should. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for hanging out in the cafe. Till next time, John, cue us out with the music. And
Cue out. And guys, don't forget to check out our question this fortnight,
yeah,
which was what game do you think is timeless, or what IP do you think will be timeless?
yeah. What do you want to see hold up? And worth plugging. We got Unwind coming up.
Yes.
Good team at Unwind. February 22nd, I believe it is. So get on Eventbrite. We'll get the link in the description. And hopefully see you all there.
Awesome. See you guys.
Bye, buddy.
Bye, everyone.
Cafe Booleans is hosted in Adelaide, South Australia. If you know of anything happening or would like to reach out to us or have a chat, you can find us on Twitter at LiveBooleans or by emailing us at hello@livebooleans.com.